number one advice to any founder is your job is sales. You have to sell your vision to your employees. You have to sell your vision to your investors. You have to sell your investors on giving you money. You have to sell your ideas to your engineers to get it built, selling something to somebody. Not necessarily your product, but that's a huge part of it too. When I'm choosing who to invest in, a lot of it has to do with how well they sell me on their vision. Everything that you're going to do business-wise is going to be selling something to somebody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Exchange. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLee or on LinkedIn at Tracy S. Lee. And I am so excited today to welcome one of my best friends, Jeremy Edberg, to the podcast again. Welcome, Jeremy, for your second time around.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk about something that I think people in or maybe outside of Silicon Valley don't really recognize about startups, which is the fact that, hey, you know what? Sometimes it takes a while for startups to grow. It doesn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, we hear about all of these overnight successes, and
Hmm.
yes, they were successful overnight after 10 years of hard work.
Exactly. Do you remember, Jeremy, when we used to go to the Cloudflare offices when it was like 20 people? Do you remember that?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, it's like, oh, Cloudflare is is such a thing right now, but gosh, I remember when it was
Right,
so small.
right. Yeah, exactly. We hung out with them for years, when they were small and trying to grow, and then they hit an inflection point, and that's what you usually hear about, right? Is the inflection point. Oh, it was an overnight success. Well, yeah, on that one particular month they did really well after building up for years.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's funny when people join startups because they're like, I'm ready for it, I'm in it, I'm going, and they're ready for like the next week for, acquisition or an
Yeah.
exit or, going IPO, right? But as you and I have talked about in the past, it's, sometimes startups can be a slog. Most startups can be a slog.
Yeah, they're usually a slog from the beginning. And
Yeah.
as a leader of a startup, that's one of the hardest things, right? Is
Hmm.
is keep people motivated through that period of the slog.
So okay, well, I have some questions for you then, just kind of about that. So, um, if you don't have that explosive growth to back up this dream of a startup, how do you communicate long-term vision to your team?
Yeah, so you really have to explain well where you plan to go eventually and how you're going to get there, right? You have to give them the full context. This is where we plan to go, and this is how we're going to get there, and these are the steps we're going to take. And they don't have to be detailed and accurate because it's going to change over time, but you have to at least give them the sense that you've thought about it, that you're not just banking on hopes and dreams of getting there one day. So I'd say that is probably the most important part, right? Is communicating that vision with discrete, specific things. You can't just be all wishy-washy. You have to give them specific things. We're going to accomplish these goals, and these are when we're going to try to do it. And maybe not meet those, but at least this is what we're trying to do. And explain to them, how you expect these things to go.
And I know this isn't, common of most companies, but I definitely feel like in Silicon Valley, when you join a tech startup, you're expecting, the TechCrunch or the Mashable or the whatever write-ups immediately, or your team is anyways. So, in most startups, there are sort of these like invisible wins, right? They're not headline worthy yet, but you kind of need to
Mhm.
still celebrate that. So, is there a secret to kind of celebrating those invisible wins to keep the momentum going?
Yeah, you really have to find the small things that can be celebrated. Oh, we had a 2x growth in users. We went from one to two. Let's celebrate that. One thing that I learned at Netflix that I really liked was we don't celebrate the calendar, right? So when everyone was having a holiday party, we didn't, and people would ask management why aren't we having a holiday party? It's because we don't celebrate the calendar, right? We celebrate wins. And even though we're much smaller than that, I like that too, right? Oh, we had a really good week in signups. We had a really good week in conversion. We got a really great POC or a great blog post, something like that, and just celebrating those smaller wins. Those are the key, especially at the beginning, is to keep that morale going, and then bringing it back to the mission and the path. What was the win, and how is that helping us on the path? How is that helping us towards our mission that
I
we
love
laid out at the
that.
beginning?
So it's like this idea of celebrating. I guess it's celebrating everything, but it's also celebrating the small things, and
Right, right.
that's
Because that's all you've
definitely a
got at the
mindset as
beginning.
well. Hmm.
Yeah. At the beginning, all you've got is the small thing.
Okay, so you can't really force things. I mean, we all know we can't like force growth, for example, right?
Yeah.
And this is a mindset. Embracing the small things is definitely a mindset that needs to be, it needs to be adopted.
Hmm.
How do you train your team to find motivation and kind of those subtle improvements versus the flashy milestones? Or I guess
So
like 200% user growth going from 1 to 2 is pretty flashy.
right, right. I mean, it is until you dive into the numbers, the whole numbers of being 1 to 2. But luckily, we're not at that stage anymore. The You have to set small, achievable goals, but that are still a stretch, right? You don't want the goal to be so small that everyone knows we're going to hit it, but you don't want it to be so big that it's impossible, right? So one of the initiatives that we did was we called it the 100 calls initiatives. We It was about 6 weeks before Thanksgiving, and we said we want to have calls with 100 customers, potential customers, within 6 months, or I mean by Thanksgiving, within 6 weeks. And we set the whole team on it. We told everybody, search your LinkedIn networks, search your social networks, whatever it is, book it with anybody who could potentially be a customer. It doesn't even matter if they're all that qualified. And the team loved it. And we had a spreadsheet and we kept track and we talked about the number every week. And not only did we book 100 calls, we actually completed more than 100 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. So, that was a win. And then we celebrated that win. And then we looked at all those calls and, what did they tell us? And now we're going to do, starting in January, another initiative where we'll have a much more qualified set. But that's an example of, we set a goal. It wasn't unachievable. It wasn't easily achievable. And it was then everybody kind of rallied behind it and got excited about it.
I love that. I know you've said before this whole idea of there are no silver bullets for developer
Right.
focused growth. So,
Yeah.
uh, can you share like some examples of when, maybe like some small little thing that you did, whether it be at Netflix or Reddit or somewhere, unlocked huge gains for you?
Yeah, so the thing with a developer tool is it's rare that you're going to have a viral moment. You might do pretty well with, say, a Hacker News post or something where you get 100 people to go look in your GitHub, or if you're really lucky, you get 1,000 stars or something like that. But generally, you're not going to have those viral moments. You're going to have those small moments of one person who used your tool and said, "Oh, that's amazing," and then you lean into that, right? You repost that, you socialize that, you talk about it multiple times in multiple different platforms, and that's the trick with the developer tools. Reddit was different because that was consumer, right? And so for Reddit, it was nothing but a series of viral moments. It was we did a thing and it was stupid and it hit the news, but a bunch of people showed up. Or we did a thing and it was awesome and it hit the news and a bunch of people showed up. Uh, so that was a very different experience, the consumer versus the developer, right? For the dev tools, it's really just a series of blocking and tackling. It's we do this thing, we try to get these people, we go to a meetup, maybe 5 people, we show it to a couple people. I was at a conference last week and grabbed some people in the hallway to give them a demo after we'd been rejected from a room because it was full. Things like that. That is what dev tools is all about.
I love that. Well, all of my portfolio, I think, is developer tooling for this Soft Angel investment. So I see the grind. I see the grind for sure.
Yeah.
So when we talk about nurturing a developer community, what is the hardest part of being able to do so?
The the hardest part of nurturing a developer community is keeping people interested. It's constantly showing them new things that they can do to keep them engaged. Uh, the ideal case is that your community itself is promoting these things and saying, "Oh, I did this cool thing," right? That's when you know you've made it. But you got to get that flywheel going, right? So you got to be in that community. You have to be showing them all cool things that you can be doing on a constant basis. Right now, our co-founders are spending most of their time writing demo apps and socializing them. Like that is the bulk of the work that they're doing right now.
I love that. You're just like one demo app away from going viral.
Exactly, right? You find that one demo app that everybody loves, and it's like, oh my god, this is so useful, and then everybody's launching it, and then you've had your viral moment, your
Yes,
overnight success, you know?
but you've had so many viral moments, Jeremy, that you just don't even care anymore, right?
Not with this company, but yeah, at Reddit for sure. Many viral moments at Reddit.
Well, I wanted to take a second before we continue the interview to say that this episode is sponsored by This.Labs. So, my company, we are trusted experts in modern web development and consulting. So, today's fast paced world can be so crazy, and especially going into 2025, it's going to be absolutely insane, I'm sure. But scaling our dev teams and bringing ideas to life can be rather challenging. So, we love helping amplify tech capabilities, whether it's expanding our dev team or whether it's streamlining projects. And I think the biggest differentiator for us is kind of taking more of a personalized and collaborative approach, right? Really trying to understand business, trying to understand product before we go into the development. Because, Jeremy, I'm sure you are well aware of how many projects die on the vine when, product and business is not aligned with development.
Yeah,
And that
definitely.
hurts. It hurts. So
Yeah.
it hurts a year later too. Um, so,
And I like
anyways,
and that approach is great, honestly.
yeah. Well, anyways, check us out, this.co. It's THISDOT.co, to figure out how we can hopefully transform your visions into a reality. And, thanks to my team too for letting me kind of do all this and their unwavering commitment to just advancing the dev community. So, back to our episode. Jeremy, before I dig into the hard questions, um, tell us
Those weren't the
about what
hard ones
you do.
already.
No, those were the easy ones.
Oh, okay.
Tell us about what you do and what Deboss does.
Yeah, so Deboss makes a stateful serverless platform. So what
Mhm.
does that mean? That means that we are a place for you. We strive to be the easiest place in the world to deploy your code on the internet, right? Specifically your backend code. So if you're a backend developer, if you're building an API, stuff like that, we have statefulness built right in. So we solve sort of the biggest problems with serverless, which is uh, their state is built right in, the queues are built right in, the cron jobs are built right in. So all of that stuff is built right in, and you don't have to deal with 100 different services. And that's just our general philosophy: is developer experience, right? It's how do we make it so easy for you as a developer to go from zero to production ready in 5 minutes? And we have lots of demos about how you can go from zero to production ready in 5 minutes. So
Yeah, I love
if you
that. And
check out our
honestly,
site at dbos.dev.
nice. And I won't name the company right now, but I was looking for a place to deploy my code one time. I used to use Firebase all the time. And I was like, you know what? I've been using Firebase for a while, so let me try something different. And as I was researching, right, I kind of researched the top three. I went to this website just to figure out what to do. And through the sign up process, all of a sudden my app was launched on the internet. And
Hmm.
I was like, well, I'm done with my research. So it's crazy, right? Like what,
Yeah.
from a developer perspective, like what just gets you, oh, this was so easy. Oh my God, it's done. Never mind. I'm not. So
And
it's
that's the
exciting
process that
that you'll be able to
we're
do
getting
that.
towards as well.
Yeah, I love that. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Um, so you have invested in so many different startups. Like, do you know the number? What is the number of startups you've invested in?
Uh, I mean, I've probably written checks directly into maybe 40 something companies, but
Yeah.
I've also participated in a bunch of syndicates, so it's probably over
Mhm.
200 total between the direct and the syndicates.
Yeah, that's so crazy. So, and you have mentored with YC as well and things like that, right? So,
Yeah.
what's your advice to founders? I mean, being a founder yourself is amazing, but like, being a founder, you can become incredibly disheartened by not seeing that hockey stick growth,
Yeah.
So like, how do you shift your mindset as a founder from kind of like that mindset of, hey, let's just build value and slowly build versus the, oh my God, I'm not getting the crazy traction that I thought I was going to get.
Right. I mean, so it's funny, right? As a CEO right now of a company, everyone asks, how's it going? And I tell them, well, you know, I would love to see more user growth, but I'm sure every CEO says that all the time. So you have to be realistic about your growth. But what I really tell founders, my number one advice to any founder is your job is sales. Not just of your product. You have to sell your vision to your employees. You have to sell your vision to your investors. You have to sell your investors on giving you money. You have to sell your ideas to your engineers to get it built. So everything you do as a CEO, as a founder, is selling something to somebody. Not necessarily your product, but that's a huge part of it too, obviously. You have to figure out how you're going to sell your product to make money. But everything you do is selling. And so, when I'm choosing who to invest in, a lot of it has to do with how well they sell me on their vision and they getting my money, getting my investment, right? And so that's my number one advice to a founder is everything that you're going to do business wise is going to be selling something to somebody. But then, yeah, beyond that, it's temper your expectations, right? Keep a close eye on your cash, and keep a close eye on your growth. I pull up our growth dashboards, our user dashboards multiple times a day, but don't stress over it. Don't get worried when the graph points slightly down a little bit over the weekend or something. Especially in the beginning with the numbers so small, the data sets aren't big enough to really see trends. Like right now, we have a drop every weekend, and because it's the weekend. But it looks bad when you go on Monday and you see a drop. You're like, oh no, what happened? And you remember, oh yeah, it was a weekend because you were probably
That's
working,
really
and
funny.
everybody else wasn't.
Yes, yes, that's really funny. I still remember seeing the Reddit Google Analytics dashboard. So I just like picture you looking at the Google Analytics for Reddit compared to, the startup that you're looking at right now. But it's
Yeah,
also
exactly.
this, but it's also this like life we live in, right? This whole idea that everything is just this instant gratification, right? Like you're trying to get a dopamine rush from every single thing. And it almost seems healthy for startup founders to not be a part of that so that they don't
Yeah.
constantly need that because it is kind of a slog to be able
Yeah,
to. Mhm.
absolutely, right? You have to, I mean, as a founder, you're going to be tempted to make a change to your ads, see that your thing went slightly up, and then be like, oh, that was the change, and then lean into it. But no, these things take time, right?
Yeah.
When you change your ads, it's going to take a week or two to show up. And you don't want to wait a week or two, but you have to. When you change a strategy, you got to give it a chance. You can't change your strategy and then make an immediate decision the next day based on the one day of metrics. It's just not enough. And as a founder who's looking at your cash position, it's hard to take a step back and give it a chance to cook. But you got to do that. And you got to make sure you have enough runway to do that, right? That's the important part.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So you all have, doubled down on a specific niche, right? A developer need and a specific niche.
Hmm.
Um, how did you guys find that, and when do you know it's time to kind of do that instead of chasing a broad market trend? Or maybe you feel like the niche that you guys have been doing is chasing a broader market trend.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, right? So our product is so broad, it could apply to anybody doing almost anything. But obviously, you can't go to the market and say, I can solve every problem in the world. So, how do you choose? One thing that we've done is, well, we did those 100 calls, what I told you about, when part of that was trying to figure out what use cases make the most sense, what came up the most. Another thing that we've done is looked at our organic growth and try to classify those folks. And unfortunately, they're all over the board. So it was hard to classify them. The thing that we're doing right now, which we launched one of, and we're going to do more of, is have product pages. So we're going to have a page that's like, here's a use case, here's something you can do with our product, and then sign up here if you're interested in more information or you want to know when this launches. And right now, we're not actually building most of those things. We're just creating those product pages to see who signs up and what they're interested in. And if enough people sign up, we will do that. But the other thing that we're trying to do is what one other investor told me is called riding the wave, right? You have to find like a really popular wave. So right now, AI agents is super popular. And our platform is really good for AI agents. So we're building demos, we're doing talks, we're going to meetups, we're really leaning into that AI agents. we're not getting a ton of signups yet because it's so new, but we are leaning into it, right? Because
Yeah.
we're trying to ride that wave. So
Well, 2025 is the year of agentic AI, right? Supposed to be.
exactly.
So you're ahead of the curve already.
Hopefully, well, that's the whole point, right? Is we're trying to find multiple curves to be at the head
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, that's, you know, I question when everybody leans into AI though. Like abandon, like so many database companies have just kind of like abandoned their core product and said, "Hey, we're doing vector databases now."
Yeah,
And I'm like, okay, but should you? I mean, is this really gaining traction? But I think with AI, it's definitely about the who gets there first. And if you get
I
there
think I
first,
think with the AI, it's there's so many people doing it. You have to be either the easiest or the best or
yeah,
both, right? So and that's what we're trying to lean into is we don't we don't make the agents, but we're really good at running them, right? We're really good at making sure that they run, and so that's what the part that we're trying to lean into.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so gosh, I guess this next question is really about setting the right expectation. But how do you maintain transparency with your team about slow progress without dampening their spirit, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I
so
guess that
that's
that is an expectation thing.
yeah, no, that's a super fine line to walk, right? I want to be ultimately transparent. I want to tell them everything all the time. And that's fine, but I also don't want to demoralize them. So it's a fine line to walk. I make all the information available. They can go look at it themselves, but I try to only highlight the good stuff, right? So they can go see the information themselves if they want, but I will only call out the good stuff. I'll occasionally call out the bad stuff, especially if it's a good learning opportunity. But mostly, I will try to call out the good stuff and say, here was a great call. Here was a great thing that happened. I heard a great thing about this employee. Someone came up to me and said, "Oh, I met one of your employees and he was great." And so I'll pass that on to the team and I'll say, this was great. Stuff like that. And I think that's how that's the best way to walk that line is find the good stuff and highlight it, but make it all available so they can dig in if they want. And if they ask the hard questions, you answer the hard questions, right? You say, "Yeah, this wasn't great, but you better have an answer as to how you're going to try to turn it around." Because that's what keeps people happy. They don't specifically care about the answer you give. They just want to know that you thought about it. They want to know that you're at least looking at this and thinking about it.
I
So
love that.
that's
Yeah.
the key.
Okay, so we talked about this whole idea of riding the wave, right? And you said that one of your investors said that, hey, you really got to like ride the wave when it comes to things like developer
Yeah,
tooling.
yeah,
And so we all know as developers out there, there are so many different tools and platforms that you can have, be a part of, etc. Um, is there a way to stand out to developers without relying on hype? Or do you really kind of need to figure out that hype train and ride it?
that is a good question that I don't actually have an answer to yet. I am, I am, I believe that you can capture developers by having the best developer experience. I don't believe you have to ride a hype train. However, riding a hype train is the best way to raise awareness to get people in to learn about your amazing tool and how easy it is to use. So I guess the answer is you're gonna need those hype trains to at least get interest. You got to build that flywheel. Once you have the flywheel going, once you become the default place to go and do the thing, then you're sitting pretty, right? Like Cloudflare we talked about earlier. At the beginning, they had to hustle real hard, but now everyone just knows like, oh, I need a CDN, I go to Cloudflare, right? It's how do you get to that inflection point? How do you get that flywheel going? And the best way to do that is to be the easiest place to do something, to be the best place to do something. And so it's all about that developer experience, especially at the beginning.
All
And when
right.
you're a startup, a lot of that is handholding. It's yeah, we're
Mhm.
here and we're available to help you through this.
So what you're saying is I need to find more hype trains to get a part of, to become a part
Potentially, yes.
of. All right.
Sorry.
Gonna be chasing that hype train. Are we in high school? Are we in high school still? Oh, well, cool, Jeremy. Thank you so much for this second interview. I always love chatting with you. You're just such a wealth of experience and
Oh,
knowledge based on all the things that you've done before. So, oh, Jeremy was also my first investor in my company, right, Jeremy?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I was.
So, yes. He was also responsible for migrating us from PHP to Python.
Was I? I
Do you
forgot
remember
about
that?
that.
Oh my
No, I
God.
totally forgot about that. But yeah, you're right. I also
Yes.
built the whole billing system.
Yes. Yeah, you were, I still remember because we were all PHP and you were like, I know Python. So you basically wrote a PHP backend to call or sorry, a Python backend to
I
call,
get to call.
to
Yeah,
so the PHP front end could call the Python backend. And also, it's hilarious, right? Thinking like, oh, we were writing our front end in PHP, but here we are, many, 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 many years later. It's been a long time. So, Jeremy, where
and
do we
now
find
we're
you?
doing Next.js, so now we're riding that wave.
I know, right? Next is one of
Speaking of
my
which, our
favorite
company is
frameworks.
launching Next.js support very soon. So
Oh, exciting. Well, for those of you all who don't know, we are also Vercel experts or
yeah.
partners here at This Dot, and yeah, it's been really fun working with that team. Jeremy, where do you hang out these days? How do people find you?
Uh, I've been so busy as the CEO, I haven't doing a lot of hanging out. But you can find me almost every day on Hacker News and on Reddit. You can occasionally find me most every day, most weekday at least on LinkedIn. And you can occasionally find me on Twitter and Blue Sky, but not very often.
Very cool. Well, thank you again, everyone, for listening. Hope you definitely check out Jeremy's company, Deboss. Jeremy, again, thank you so much for all of the advice. So, founders out there, don't get discouraged. I think this also applies to larger organizations leading internal products because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
still
Don't
the
get
same thing.
discouraged by a slow growth at the beginning because they all work that way.
Yeah. And get on a hype train.
And try to
Get
find a
on
hype train to ride. Yep.
it. All right, everyone. We will see you all next time.